afternoon, evening, or night, whatever time it is that you're deciding and choosing to tune in and watch and listen to the first Woodshop Word, brought to you by Mishawaka First United Methodist Church and Pastor Rick, myself. I appreciate you taking time to listen, explore, nurture, expand, and develop your faith today. When we're able to go back to meeting regularly as a worshiping congregation and doing face-to-face learning groups and service and those kinds of things, look forward to doing it. I encourage those of you that are doing the Gospel of John study to continue to read and work with the questions and explore and expand your faith. When we do begin that worship section, we'll go back to focusing on the Gospel of John again. And now on to some bit of the fun. So what does a table saw right here to my right, your left, what does that table saw have to do with the COVID-19 virus? I know that's a question you probably weren't thinking about sometime earlier today, but one of the things I want to direct your attention to are that the table saw has some tools. Now you'll notice I don't have the safety guards on. That's kind of so you can see the blade a little better and recognize why we'd want to use some tools, because that blade spinning at top speed can be kind of fearsome. The reality is that I want to tell you that I respect that blade, but I work not to fear it, because when I fear the blade, then I tend to make mistakes and be hesitant. But I have these tools called push sticks and a push block, and they're the ones that I use when I need to get in here really close to this table saw, to this blade, and to push a piece through, whether I'm doing a rip cut that the table's set up for now, or a cross cut with the miter tool that comes with it. The truth is that today, one of the things we're facing that comes from COVID-19 is what we might know as social isolation. And it's going to work with it not as a particularly psychological term or a sociological term today, but what I really want to talk about is this question: have you ever been in a situation where you were cut out, where you were ostracized from other people for a period of time, when you didn't have any person-to-person or face-to-face connection? This may be, for some of us with the COVID-19, one of the first times we've had a likely extended period of time of being isolated from each other, from our friends and our co-workers and those. And maybe the first time we experience our relationships being limited. It's a sad time, I want to tell you, but at the same time, it caused me to think about the reality that sometimes we've had people in our communities who have been socially isolated. And it's not because there was a virus. It's simply because there was something going on in their lives, maybe even our lives, that left them cut out from us being able to be together and to connect with them. My friends, the COVID-19 virus, even though it is around us, people can be in spaces and places without that virus and be apart. They can even be in a crowd of people and still feel social isolation. The communications, the interactions that sometimes we have with people at work or when we're shopping or even out to eat, those are not the ones that I would consider necessary for us to live and to thrive. You know, a greeting by a store employee is appreciated, it's nice and it's good, but in my book, it's not the kind of conversation that contains an adequate level of social, psychological, or spiritual intimacy, communicating and exchanging the kinds of things like personal acceptance, personal care, human love, appreciation, and being able to do that in a reciprocal way where we're exchanging it. In fact, in a phone conversation with one of our church family yesterday on Saturday morning, an individual was noting to me how they were feeling how do I want to put this, concerned that they were going to miss a time of sustained contact with other people with whom they have some deep mutual appreciation, love, and concern and care. And quite frankly, gang, that's a long way to say that this person is going to miss hanging out with their peeps, with their people. And in that case, being together with people we start to recognize is really a human need. Some of us, maybe even many of us, try to live independent and unencumbered lives as if we don't need to depend on somebody or even anybody. And the irony is that most of us, a majority of us, want to have a group of people that we can call ours. Our people's thoughts, their opinions, and their expressed or unexpressed emotional bonds with us are a significant way and a necessary portion of our healthy living. Now, I know some of us guys don't talk about feelings, at least not in a language that some people recognize. And we tend to talk about what we think. We tend to talk a little bit about what we believe, and head nods and that kind of stuff, little movements. And in some instances, it's the time that we have in our shared man cave space that hints at our hidden emotional code that we use. I'm not going to reveal any more of that emotional code that might go on down here in this workshop, since I've already kind of hinted at some of it and might have even broken some boundaries in doing so. But the reality is that emotion and shared emotions with others, relationships, are what represent the energy that we want and need in life together. And the reality of healthy relationships is so vital and significant for every human that in addressing relationship healing in the life of his people, in the life of Jesus' people, is something that Jesus reinforced not just once or twice, but several times. I'm just going to refer you to Matthew 18, verses 15 to 20. And it indicates there that the catalyst that keeps us in a healthy understanding, a healthy way of perceiving what's going on in attitude and mind, in nature and in spirit, my friends, is Jesus' living presence. And Jesus put it this way: for whenever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them. In fact, in this particular passage, its setting is dealing with issues of difference and conflict, and dealing with issues of fear. And Jesus is reminding his people, his peeps, if you will. He's reminding you and he's reminding me that when we're gathered together, 2 or 3 of us, in his presence, he is the one that shapes us. So I'm drawn to the situation that we're in as our whole world is focused on a singular virus, which is producing in many people, maybe even a lot of people, a fear reality. There are multiple interactions happening among us, and within each one of us in the midst of this time, the very human need each of us has at the same time is a pathway of potential viral infection. And for some, a pathway to significant illness, and even for others, death. And we feel that threat. When the pathway to fulfill our human need, the need of being together with others, to be in relationship, to share, dare I say, emotional moments and times together, when that seems to be blocked, we often respond as humans with fear and frustration and anger and often mistrust. Let me say, this sounds like a fine mixed beverage, guaranteed to result in additional human pain, though, and suffering. This mix, my friends, of reaction of anger, this reaction of frustration and fear, all stirred together with mistrust, that mix is a poison which corrodes the community relationships and connections, and just as certainly as it corrodes the human wiring of your heart and your mind and your soul and your body. The more you respond in fear and its relatives, it's like drinking battery acid as your beverage of the day. As you hear or experience more bad news, my friends, whether it's accurate or whether it's not, it's almost like you grab another drink of it for just a little bit more good measure. There's a different choice that we can make. And that's a choice that Jesus brings to us. I want to take you to a man most of us know as Mr. Rogers. And one of the things I've always appreciated about him when talking about times of crisis or tragedy is that his thought processes to direct us and the children with whom he worked was just times to say in times of significant stress and tragedy is to look for the helpers. My friends, here's a different choice that we can make. Yeah, it's human for us to have fear. It's a response we have when we feel threat. At that point, though, we don't have to follow the pathway of fear. We can make a different decision. We can leave our human condition on autopilot, grab the battery acid, so to speak, drinking the fear deeply, caught up in the adrenaline of drama of COVID-19. Or you can look for the helpers. Be a helper, be creative, to raise up ways of nurturing connection in life and care and relationship when social distancing really is important in starving the COVID-19 virus of its means of transmission. By the way, let's choke this sneaky little, well, you choose a word, to death. What do you say? Because we don't have to cave into just simply fear. We can actually choose a place and a way that builds relationships in challenging times. The Apostle Paul was jailed or imprisoned in Philippi and Jerusalem and Antipatris, overnight, by the way, on the way to Caesarea. He was imprisoned in Caesarea. He was imprisoned on a ship on the Mediterranean, and then he was imprisoned in Rome. You can count the ways that was. But even though he was imprisoned, you might think that cut him off from being able to share, to live, and to be the love and the grace and the gospel of Jesus Christ. But the reality is, Paul found ways, even in those challenging situations, to continue his relationship with his colleagues, with people that he was placed into jail or thrown into jail with people in the communities of the churches that he had started. He wrote letters from prison. Many of us, if we submit to the fear and in the times of challenge, we instantly say, well, that's it. Can't do anything else about that. We become hesitant, a little bit like using a table saw. If you have tools, if you have the right tools with you, in the right hands and the right person, then we can do some really marvelous things for the kingdom of God. Some of you may remember Romans 8:26-28. Maybe you remember 28 the most, but Romans 26:28 says this, likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. For we do not know how to pray as we ought, but that very Spirit intercedes with sighs too deep for words. And God, who searches the heart, knows what is in the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. We know that all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. That Apostle Paul gave us tools, spiritual tools to use. And these tools help us in the midst of life situations, including fear, to shape our thinking, to discern our emotions, to focus our attention, and to adjust our attitudes. Those tools are relationship tools for men, women, and children. And these tools Jesus used to lift us from the darkness of destruction into the light of creation and creativity and healthy, winning relationships. Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, the first letter, chapter 5, 16 and 18 verses, says this to us. Maybe it's surprising to hear it today. Rejoice always and pray without ceasing. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Do not quench the Spirit. When you rejoice in Jesus, who has your back, by the way, you keep your head up. looking to see in any circumstance how you can nurture relationship connections and life. And when you pray without ceasing, you are always opening your life for Jesus to shape you for a better community. When you give thanks in all circumstances, you are reminding yourself that you are not God, and God will do something good in and through you if you say yes to God in those moments. And when you leverage the power of God, when you say yes to God, you find that you have resistance to the fear, and you will increase and become more aware of the Spirit leading you. My hope and prayer for us is that we embrace these words of tools in this time, that we do not allow the coronavirus to become the thing which dominates us and rules us, but instead in our hearts, we continue to allow Jesus to move and work, and that we be creative in our response for health, and that we comfort those who are stressed, that we embrace those who are feeling lonely in the ways and best ways that we can do that. Godspeed and God's grace for you. From the Woodshop Word. Good night.